Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today we're exploring how a truly groundbreaking 2007 film, Taare Zameen Par, or Like Stars on Earth, tackled the massive failure of traditional schooling, and it did so entirely through the lens of observation and love. You see, this isn't just a touching story about a struggling student. It is a meticulously crafted educational tool. The film itself teaches us about neurodiversity, but what's equally fascinating, and what we'll be digging into, is how the filmmakers utilized cutting-edge, empathetic teaching methods behind the scenes to actually bring this story to life.
So here's the central question we really need to unpack. Why do brilliant children fail in school? Now, what's so interesting about this question is that it completely flips the script. It forces us to look at the rigid, one-size-fits-all systems we place our kids in, rather than just pointing the finger and blaming the student. Often, traditional education demands absolute conformity, and when a child doesn't fit that exact mold, well, they get marginalized. Throughout this explainer, we're going to see exactly how this systemic failure happens, and more importantly, how it can be totally reversed with the right pedagogical approach.
We start our journey with Ishan Awasti. Imagine being an 8-year-old boy whose creative imagination is just incredibly rich. He literally sees the world in vibrant colors and stories. But this amazing artistic gift is completely ignored by his strict father, Nand Kishore, and a traditional school curriculum that basically only values conventional academic success. Ishan is drowning in an environment that just doesn't speak his language, and instead of trying to help him, the system just slaps him with the label of being lazy and a troublemaker.
And this brilliantly illustrates the compounding trauma that Ishan faces daily. Think about it. He's already repeated the 3rd grade because of his academic struggles. On top of that, he is constantly living in the shadow of his older brother Johan, who's basically the perfect student and a star tennis player. The absolute breaking point comes when his father, completely frustrated by Ishan's perceived rebellion, just ships him off to a strict boarding school against his mother's wishes. This sudden isolation plunges Ishan into profound fear, anxiety, and severe depression. But then, enter the game changer. Here we see the stark contrast in pedagogy when a new substitute art teacher, Ram Shankar Nikamb, arrives to replace the incredibly harsh Mr. Holker at the boarding school. Mr. Holker represents the old guard, right? He's strict, he's abusive, and he is super quick to punish any academic failure. But Nikamb, who also happens to teach at a school for children with developmental disabilities, brings a totally different energy to the classroom. He's cheerful, he's optimistic, and he uses art as a bridge to connect with the kids. It is this fundamental shift in teaching philosophy that literally changes everything.
Let's look at how this empathetic energy actually translates into a concrete, step-by-step pedagogical process to save Ishan from slipping through the cracks. Notice how the very first step here isn't academic at all. Actually, it's emotional observation. Nikamb immediately notices Ishan's unhappiness when he's the only one not painting during class. From there, he reviews Ishan's past notebooks, deduces that his academic shortcomings are actually textbook signs of dyslexia, and then takes the absolutely vital step of traveling to Mumbai to educate the parents before he even begins direct remedial care.
Now here is where we hit a massive societal roadblock. Even when Nikamb travels all the way to Mumbai to explain the reality of dyslexia, literally showing the parents exactly how Ishan struggles to process letters and words, they initially refuse to accept it. His father, Nand Kishore, completely dismisses the clinical diagnosis. He actually calls it an intellectual disability that's just an excuse for laziness. It's frustrating to watch for sure, but it perfectly highlights the huge wall of societal ignorance that educators so often have to break through.
But Nikamb doesn't give up. Instead, he delivers this profound truth. This is the turning point, guys. This powerful realization shifts the entire narrative away from a mere clinical diagnosis and moves it toward genuine empathy. It proves that real education requires a deep emotional connection. It's only once the father sees Ishan struggling to read a signboard outside and finally realizes the sheer depth of Nikamb's care that his walls begin to fall. True teaching is deeply rooted in unconditional support.
So with permission to tutor Ishan finally secured, Nikamb deploys these highly effective teaching strategies. And notice, he doesn't just drill him on spelling right away. First, he has to rebuild the boy's completely shattered confidence, which he does by presenting a list of famous, highly successful dyslexic figures to the entire class. Only then, using specialized remedial techniques developed by actual dyslexia experts, does he patiently work on Ishan's reading and writing. By utilizing these specific techniques and intertwining them with art, Nikamb completely transforms both Ishan's academic abilities and his entire outlook on life.
Okay, let's zoom out for a second, because what's absolutely fascinating here
is that the film itself is a massive lesson to society. It was crafted meticulously by creators who desperately wanted to educate audiences on neurodiversity. The empathy and the teaching methods we just saw Nakum use on screen, they were actually mirroring exactly how the filmmakers operated behind the camera. Let's take a look at how this educational masterpiece was actually built.
7 years. That is how long this incredible developmental journey took. It proves the film wasn't just some fictional story they threw together, but a heavily researched awareness campaign about dyslexia and child psychology. It all started when editor Deepa Bhatia read about the childhood of legendary Japanese filmmaker Akira Kurosawa and how an attentive art teacher totally changed his life. From there, she and Amol Gupta spent years, literally years, consulting with the Maharashtra Dyslexia Association and parents groups to ensure their script was grounded in absolute reality while also carefully protecting the identities of the real children they observed.
And bringing this ambitious project to life required massive collaboration. Amir Khan actually stepped into the director's chair for the very first time to ensure production didn't stall. Why? Specifically to protect the young lead actor Darshil Safari from aging out of the role before they could finish filming. Amol Gupta remained heavily involved as the creative director on set, and they even brought in real-life artist Sameer Mandal. And Mandal didn't just create the beautiful watercolor paintings you see in the film, he actually ran workshops and taught the real school children art on set.
Talk about dedication. This brilliantly illustrates the literal hands-on approach the team took to ensure authentic representation on screen. When the art department's designs for Ishan's dyslexic school notebook didn't look quite right to Amir, he didn't just complain to the props team. No, he had already personally familiarized himself with how dyslexic writing actually functions, so he sat down and wrote the flipped mirrored entries himself, using his left hand, just to make sure he captured that authentic struggle.
Behind the scenes, Amir heavily mirrored Nikum's empathy, using unconventional, almost documentary-style methods to make the children feel safe and act completely naturally. To keep the kids from feeling overly scrutinized, they used hidden cameras and relatively little camera movement. But more importantly, they treated the film set like a healthy classroom. They made sure the children were never just sitting around idle, keeping them actively engaged outside of filming. This actually helped the kids learn patience, cooperation, and how to behave empathetically towards children who might have real-life struggles, just like Ishan.
10,500. Take a guess what that number is. That massive number is exactly how many real children were utilized to capture the breathtaking wide shots in the final art mela climax. They brought in thousands of students from surrounding schools just to fill the background and create a truly grand, immersive, and joyful environment for the film's emotionally resonant finale.
Now, on the flip side, contrast that with the number 8. That's the agonizing number of hours it took to shoot a single, simple, early scene of Ishan collecting fish. Why did it take so long? Because it required filming at a muddy water tank that had to be constantly emptied and refilled over and over to get the perfect shot. This level of patience behind the camera is exactly what the film advocates for when teaching children, taking the time required to get things right without rushing them.
This is where it gets really clever. These behind-the-scenes tactics show how teaching and directing both require a deep psychological understanding of a child's mind, and above all, a commitment to their safety. Knowing that kids naturally act up around cameras, the crew got creative. First assistant director Sunil Pandey intentionally bored the kids with endless talking so they'd naturally zone out for the school assembly scene. Later, Amir told them stories, manipulating his pacing to capture genuinely tired reactions for classroom scenes. And of course, when filming near a 15-foot deep pond, they immediately deployed 4 lifeguards. It was an absolute masterclass in child psychology and care. So what is the big takeaway from all of this? Ultimately, through rigorous, multi-year research and profound empathy, both in front of and behind the camera, Taare Zameen Par successfully educated an entire society. It took the incredibly damaging myth of the lazy child and completely dismantled it, replacing it with a scientifically backed, emotionally resonant understanding of dyslexia and neurodiversity. I want to leave you with this provocative thought, challenging us all to rethink how we guide and nurture the next generation. We've seen how observation and patience saved Ishan, and how those exact same values created a cinematic masterpiece. It is time we ask ourselves, how can we make empathy the very foundation of our educational systems moving forward? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.